Hi guys, welcome to the first Blue Period episode 1 breakdown. It is the first breakdown of the full season. I'm very excited to get going, and blue is my favourite colour. So before we begin, hello, I am Clockwork Noodles. I break down seasonal anime. So if you have just found me for the first time, or you are going to be joining us for the Blue Period reviews, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out. There are 5 different reviews going up this season. You may find a few other things that I am reviewing that you too are also watching. There is, of course, a Discord channel too that allows you to have notifications to your phone, and I also tell you when there's delays. That's probably the biggest positive there, is you know when things are delayed, and it's just a good way of just keeping up, even yourself, just knowing when something has gone up. Let's get going with the first anime of this season, and it is a slice of life. So if you are here on the channel and you've seen other previous breakdowns of mine, especially if you are watching the Aquatope stuff, I think this is going to appeal more to the Aquatope fans. You know I like slice of life. Off the bat, I'm just going to get it out the way before we hit it. This is no Aquatope. The art in this one, even though it's an anime about art, the general art of the characters is not as pretty, anywhere near as pretty as Aquatope. But Aquatope is very, very special. Still art that we can get by on. But I think it's more going to be a story-based one. Well, it's the story this time bumping us along, because we actually have a very interesting MC this time. We are introduced to our MC, who is called Yuguchi. He's a very interesting MC because he's not an MC like most, where an MC is supposed to be just likable or something. Off the bat, he appears to, even to us with the cold open, as somebody who you may not want to really hang out with initially, because he comes off as douchey. I'm going to say douchey. I don't think that's even professional, but douchey in a little sense. And obviously there's a bit later on when he really does show some interesting colours, which again, he's just saying for the sake of saying. But he's a very interesting character because he immediately doesn't fit quite in. He shows that he doesn't understand art initially, off the bat going, I could draw it myself. Sure, you could probably try and do a replica, but you're not going to capture what art is all about. And of course, art is a very debated topic. I remember going into philosophy. If you know me, I took a minor in philosophy, and I actually had to do a topic on discussing what is art, and that is a nightmare and a half, guys. Actually discussing what makes art and what makes not art and what is art, it's just a nightmare. Interesting off the bat that our MC isn't initially as likable as most main MCs are. This is definitely going to be a story about growth, perspective, and even by the end, already I'm starting to like him a bit more, because at the end, he is a lot more honest and he finally finds something that he can actually get right behind. But the MC is an interesting character because he actually reminds me of a few people when I went to university who actually exist, so he feels quite real. He understands the formula to getting good grades, and there are formulas. There's a way to pass a certain exam if you know what they're marking, you know how to lay it out. There was a point in, I think it was my A-levels, where I basically hit the formula for the history exams, and I passed every history exam because I knew exactly how to set it out. I knew the formula, so you'd start by going, this is the point, this is some evidence, this is what it means at the end, kind of thing. You know how to set it out. So there are people like this, and it's quite nice that he does feel quite real, despite him having lots of flaws, which I think makes him even more interesting. He's an MC with a lot of different flaws and depths, which make him a lot more realistic, relatable in a sense, because many of us may at some point have felt a bit lost, or we don't fit into something, or we might feel that something might feel very pointless. I also got the feeling initially at the beginning that he was quite bored of life. Life was life. He was just bouncing along with it. He was being pushed along with life. He wasn't really participating actively. I also like the trope where he is forced back into school because he's forgotten cigarettes. So as opposed to I'm suddenly drawn back to the common room and something amazing happens, he obviously gets his encounter with the painting, which is very key. It's that turning point for him. But it's because of cigarettes. He's got to go back and make sure he doesn't kind of get yelled at by teachers or anything. And he's also trying to keep the cigarette thing secret, because I definitely don't think he'd happily let his parents know that he's doing it. It's an interesting one, but it also feels realistic in a way to get him finally back into a classroom to actually look into some art. Because seeing art in person is a completely different experience. And now that we're on the topic of art, I figured I may as well at least discuss one of my favourite paintings, because we're here. I guess we can talk about art. My favourite painting, one of my favourite paintings, people are going to look at this and go, it's boring. My favourite painting is The Lament for Icarus, and this is by Herbert James Draper. I got very lucky. I think it still might even be there. It's in the National Gallery in London. Fantastic painting. It looks amazing. It's bigger in real life than it looks. The colours just don't do it justice on the picture, so I'll show you a few pictures here. Seeing something in person has a whole different experience than seeing it on your phone screen. There are pinks and very subtle purples in those wings you're just not going to get by looking at any of these pictures. It's a beautiful image, and it's one of those where I wasn't aware of it until I saw it in person, and then I knew immediately that I liked it, and I drew it and I took some pieces on it. I did actually take art to A level, and similar to the MC in a sense, I ended up not taking art to university because I was told there's no future in art for you. You're not going to get a job in art. So sadly, I never ended up taking art any further. We get our very interesting scene with our character Yuka. So Yuka's been an interesting character already. She actually sees through the act, which is at least kudos to her that she can see through the whole I'm trying to fit in act. But this is when we obviously get Yaguchi acting more like a douche at this point, because he basically fires back because he knows it's going to hurt her by telling her, there's no future in art. You're just studying something where there's no future, there's no point. You may as well be like using your face instead. So he gets quite rude. Obviously at this point, he's an unlikable character, but I kind of figured that it would be more of an interesting story if we follow an unlikable character who suddenly becomes likable. I can see what you're going for. He's annoying at this point because he's supposed to be annoying. He has this very closed-minded view where he doesn't really understand why people would follow art because there's no money in it. Obviously, it's all about money and being able to support yourself. So he doesn't actually understand the different reasons why people will actually study art and actually choose to willingly pursue it. This is when things get quite interesting because we start to see him opening up, and it does happen a bit quicker. It happens quicker than I thought it might. But it is a really nice, realistic moment because it's quite quiet. There's also what I've noticed with this first episode, at the most, there isn't really an overly use on music. So there's a lot of quiet moments. And this moment here, there was no music whatsoever. And a bit later down the line, there's a bit where you get background noise. There's a lot of background noise and you can hear other classrooms. But there's no overkilling it with music or anything. I like the choice on this. But we finally start to get some of that blue, and we're finally seeing things like the morning scenery. It's all blue to him, and that's the way it just appears to him, because Yaguchi is seeing a colour and he's seeing it just as blue. So he's not seeing the buildings or anything. The blue is what's standing out most to him. I like the fact as well that they're using the CGI on the paint. It's a nice little choice there. They're not overkilling it on CGI, but it works with the mixing the paint on the brush. But let's talk about blue, because this is blue period. We may as well talk about the colour blue and the symbology and the colour theory behind blue. It's a colour of two halves, and you guys may know that blue is my favourite colour. I currently have blue hair as well. I love my blue hair. Blue is two colours. There is the calm, tranquil, healing aspects. It's a very nice colour in that sense, but it's also got those negativities to it. It's isolated, it's cold, it's very detached and lonely. And that is what I think is more the colours that are reaching out to Yaguchi. It's more what he's feeling. He's perhaps feeling isolated because he doesn't quite fit in. He's having to do things that maybe isn't even how he wants to be acting to fit in and go along with the crowd. He's bumping his way through life just because he can, and he's not really seeing any purpose in it. Now, blue periods are often low. So Picasso had a blue period. He went through blue and he was just using a load of blue. There are often periods where they go through low points or something would happen and they just paint a little bit more darker, a little bit more blue. But those periods as well can be absolutely gorgeous, amazing artworks that have come out during the blue periods of these artists. But we finally get our explosion of feelings. I think perhaps the highlight of this episode is the explosion of feelings that we get with Yaguchi's art getting praised. And it's an interesting piece. I do like the use of the blue. I love the fact as well that you can tell that he doesn't draw very much. He's not an artist off the bat, but his use of colour is very, very nice. But it's this explosion of feelings where the unlikable character shows emotion. He actually shows some tears, and this is what I think is what they're going for, that he's not meant to be a likable character from episode 1. He's a character who is going to grow, and we're going to grow with him. He feels realistic because he's able to suddenly start communicating with the people around him for the first time. He's able to show them what he wants them to see because they suddenly realise where they are. The colour isn't the thing they pick up on. They'll pick up on where they are. So to them, it's, hey, we get ramen here. This is important to us because we get ramen here. His art obviously gets praised, and this is also showing us the power of art, because if you were to take away all the names, you would still praise art for what it is. You wouldn't care about who had done it or not. Art is powerful and often sometimes speaks for itself, and it doesn't need a name. As I said before, the music isn't really overpowering. It is used when it is needed, mainly during the points like the art sequence where he's suddenly going through a realisation, so the music starts to pick up. At one point, they have just got simple piano, and it's the use of simple piano showing us the passage of time. But it's a really nice first episode to show us the pressures of life that he has to actually worry about. His parents tell him we don't have money for a private. He's got his really high grades, but he knows that he can't go into a private school. They don't have the money. That's not something that he can have for his future. We do start to see some of those limitations. If he's like fourth in the class, I'm sure that he probably would be able to probably have the grades to get into those higher schools. But just because he has the grades doesn't mean he can actually go for it. But the simple piano music, the ticking as he's in his room, the passage of time as we start to see him growing more and more frustrated because he can't communicate what's in his head onto the page. So what he is drawing doesn't look like the images he has in his head. My boy, welcome to the world of art. Every time I have an amazing image in my head and I try to draw, it's never the same. Never the same. And I can imagine that is the same for seasoned artists as well, that you always have an image in your head and it doesn't always come out quite like you want it to come out like. But we do get our first art lesson of the episode, or hopefully the season as well. The idea of perspective and scale. So he asks for some advice and she starts to tell him about perspective and scale. Perspective, I think, is probably the key word for this episode because it's all about changing your perspective. He asks her, why would you go into a field where you would have no money or no chances and there's no guarantee? We're just sprinkling this character with perspective here. Here's some sprinkles. Have some sprinkles. This is your perspective in your face. Because people might want to learn. People want to have those materials around them to be able to express themselves, a broadening of skills. Art, in my eyes, is a transferable skill, especially nowadays when a lot more of us are online and there's a lot more of being able to be a self-employed. Maybe not so much in Tokyo, I'm not sure about that, but especially over here, there are rooms where artists can actually make money from what they do. They can create things, they can sell them. There's a lot more scope now that the internet is as big as it is, having your own Etsy store, doing things like that. So to me, art is a transferable skill. I don't see it like he does. I don't see it as pointless. I see it as something that requires a bit more work, but I do see it as a field that you could be very, very happy in because a lot of people really enjoy art and you could try and make some money with it and be comfortable at the most. The teacher, I think we need to talk about the teacher because the teacher is absolutely amazing, especially with the kids who don't work hard just because they're lacking the passion. This teacher is fantastic. She handles these uninterested kids very well, despite the fact they're even sleeping in her class, and she clearly sees the cigarettes and doesn't make a actual pass at it or anything. And she also handles the boob thing very, very well with the whole, that's fine, great, if you want to draw boobs, make sure they're artistic, give them a bounce, make them realistic. That sequence is amazing, and this teacher really deserves a lot of kudos because she rolls with it. She tries to encourage people. She doesn't knock them. Sure, if you really enjoy looking at boobs, make them realistic, draw them, make them look really great. She is, of course, very, very supportive. I love her as a teacher. I think she's strong characters of this episode. Definitely a fantastic character who deserves a lot of kudos there. And we start to see Yaguchi finally opening up. And I think fantastic to her as well because she does something that a teacher, I think, is supposed to do. I think with teachers, the goal really should just be to be inspiring. And she is inspiring. She encourages. She doesn't knock anybody. She doesn't knock him down or anything. She inspires. He finally feels inspired and opens up about something that he might want to do. He suddenly says, I'm going to join this club. And sure, there is this low acceptance rate. And this is going to be adding pressure. It's really scary thinking it's just 1 in 200 who get accepted. Scary, scary numbers. It creates this drive and our character is more fired up. Perhaps this is more the competitive side to him. Perhaps there is this hidden competitive side where telling somebody something is impossible, but then suddenly going, no, because you've said it's impossible, it makes me want to do it even more. So very, very happy to see that in him. At the most, the very last sequence of him is the real him coming through. I think this is going to be an interesting anime. It's very different from the other slice of life I've been seeing this year, but it's nice to see something about art. The art itself, let's talk about the art. The picture with the angel is fantastic. They are using art when it counts, just again, the art of the anime itself is okay. There's nothing special about the main art of the characters, the faces or anything. There's nothing majorly special, but the art itself, I think it's the art that is supposed to speak. So it's no Aquatope, but the story is fascinating. I'm hooked. I can't wait to see where the anime goes. Something that I've heard a lot of people raving about, and it is sitting at 7.8 on Mal right now. Other people are also seeing something in the anime, so I really hope it continues to hold. I'm very excited to see what this anime has in store. I don't know how many episodes there are, so if you can fill me in. Mal is currently saying question mark. If you know how many episodes we have to look forward to, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much, and here's a question for you guys. What is your favourite painting? Let me know in the comments below. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.